So, Jonathan, you're what many would consider a quintessential lifer there at Sky and Sky Sports, racking up over 17 years with the company. And even your predecessors, Barney Francis and Rob Webster, served similar tenures before their relatively recent departures. For perspective, I had a bit of a look, actually, because you started around 2005, if my notes serve me correctly. And that was before even the iPhone was launched. And now, let's say fast forward into 2022, and things have changed quite a lot in terms of that product's role and the way sports is being consumed. So, and obviously now in the modern media era, there is a lot of change in the media landscape and in companies themselves. So really, I'm just curious, what drove you to Sky in the first place? And really, how have you seen the Sky Sports offering transform for consumers?
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for that. I'll kind of date myself even more. I joined Sky in 1998. I originally worked in the research department of Sky Media, so the advertising function. I could talk a little, but part of that role was kind of working closely with the channels. So that's how I kind of built up my relationship with Sky Sports. And we'll talk a little bit about the journey. But yeah, lots of people at Sky have been our lifers, and I think that's a kind of a credit to the experience. Hopefully, lots of opportunity, lots of variety, good business to be part of, and that's not just sport. We're obviously part of a much bigger Sky business, and that brings again a lot of diversity to opportunity. So yeah, I moved over to sports in 2005. I wrote a letter to the managing director then at the time saying if anything ever came up, so I could predate your iPhone by still be writing letters. Maybe I'd have texted him if that opportunity had existed. And he was good enough to sort of listen and give me that opportunity. And I came over in kind of a strategy and planning role. And again, as I sort of said, it was being part of a bigger business. And I always think about my role as kind of being sort of three broad sets of people that we've got to serve. So there's like the rest of the business and how they're trying to deliver their objectives around the investments that we make in sport. There's the industry, and then there's the Sky Sports team. And I guess predominantly when I came in, my role was to sort of bridge the gap between Sky Sports and the rest of the business, because that was a kind of an ongoing challenge about how do we get closer to them without actually anyone in Sky Sports having to actually do it. So I was kind of brought in to bridge that gap. I would then probably say through a period of my career, I then had more of a focus on the partners piece, the external, the industry, working very closely with people like Richard Verreau, our previous commercial director, and I really enjoy that and being around our partners. And then kind of more latterly, I guess, as I've had more sort of senior responsibility, then much more about being responsible for a wider team and the whole the development of the people within Sky Sports. So lots of different things and lots of variety, loads of change to the business. We the mantra at Sky is kind of believe in better, and that's always sort of framed as what more can we be doing? What's the sort of relentless pursuit of better? Maybe to lean on some of the things that we used to listen to Sir Dave Brailsford talking about, sort of marginal gains. But then there's the really big stuff that we do as well. So look, there's been a lot of change. I've absolutely enjoyed it, although probably not each day. I may not necessarily have gone home carrying that sentiment, but I kind of certainly reflect and hopefully still look forward to lots more opportunity and lots of change and good things coming down the line at Sky Sports.
I always wonder when I talk to people who've been in a role a long time, like you have, about whether the marketplace in media is changing so much over, let's say, the last 5 to 10 years, been undergoing enormous transformation. Do you find now that you're in a good rhythm with what you do in terms of the job and you know what to do day to day, or is it constantly needing to learn and understand what's going on in the way consumer behavior is changing, what partners are looking for, monetization models, all that sort of thing? Or is that still relatively, I don't want to say calm, but kind of you're sort of ahead of the game there. You're really on top of those sorts of things?
I think it's a balance. So sort of the one thing that I keep trying to sort of tell myself is sort of don't be complacent. Don't think you've got things under control, because that's going to be the time. But there's sort of something that comes up. But it's also just not overreact to things. Try and take a balance. There's a lot of emotion around sport. There's a lot of emotion around rights processes. There's a lot of emotion around things that happen on screen, social media that goes around there. So there's a lot of opportunity to sort of react quite strongly to stuff. But really, I do, the ambition of the team is to sort of deflect that and protect the teams more broadly from that and be pretty resilient. So yeah, look, I think that's how we think about things. Sky is a business that again was prided itself on how it kind of understands customers, viewers, consumers, and how we reflect our offering, whether that's over the years things like Sky Plus, Sky Q, now TV, now with Sky Glass, how we're always moving our story forward and trying to do that in a way that we think is kind of serving the customer's needs. And that's if I look back and think, you referenced sort of 5-10 years, I think about some of the challenges we faced at the time in Sky Sports. People were saying, well, look, you've got these channel lineup and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I don't really know what I'm getting here, and I have to have it all. And part of the changes that we made in 2017 was to reflect that change in consumer desire and demand. And so we kind of created those genre channels, those destinations for certain sports. We gave people an ability to be more flexible in how, in the packaging that they acquire from Sky. I think the reality is actually what it's shown is that people like the breadth. And, as sports fans, we know, there are clearly people, single sport fans, but actually the majority of people have got kind of broader interests in that, and they like the idea of kind of access to all of it. So yeah, we're always thinking about our offering. We're always trying to be very focused on the customers. Again, what we at Sky have done over the last few years, and with the platforms that I talked about, being much more of an aggregator, creating that destination so that kind of viewers and customers go to sort of one place, less remote controls in the household, all that kind of stuff, just trying to make it easier for everyone to kind of get what they need in one place.
And so you touched upon the shift to sports-specific channels, which ended up with golf, cricket, F1, Premier League, football, if I remember correctly, if I've got those all right. But I'm also interested, there's obviously this development with streaming that's been happening quite rapidly over the years. Some would say it's actually happened slower than probably some people did predict. But you have Now TV that sits there. I'm just curious, how does Now TV sit within your ecosystem? Does it sit in parallel and in tandem, or is that all just one part of the Sky Sports business?
It's very complementary. I think there previous iterations to Now TV where you were able to subscribe to Sky Sports channel. There was a product that predated it, but the Now TV product, I think it's coming up to being 10 years old now. But really over the last few years has been a big sort of engine of growth for our business and become an increasingly important part of our story. When we talk to rights holders about access and reach, it opens us up to lots more people a lot quicker with perhaps different contract commitments and things like that. So Now TV is very central to our thinking and our offering, and really has been, I would imagine it's probably one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, sort of D2C products in the UK for sport. But clearly there's a breadth, and the offering that you get on Now TV absolutely replicates what you get from a Sky subscription, or whether it's through one of our other wholesale partners. So really important for us.
Interesting. So we have an international audience who listens to this, so quite a chunk of people outside of the UK. Could you just dig a bit deeper there on how do you look at the Now TV proposition then for those partnership conversations you're having versus how you have those conversations around your traditional specific channels that you have in the Sky Sports product?
Well, so I kind of talked about it complementary, and I guess when we would talk to a partner, and hopefully sort of people understand the core Sky Sports business pretty well, and some of our USPs, in fact, our dedicated channels, the level of production, the innovation that we put around that. Then we have other important elements to our story. We talk about a channel like Sky Sports News that means that we're always on with our coverage, with our previews, with our reviews, with our analysis, telling the stories for our partners. We also have a very, very significant digital and social footprint, whether that's our owned and operated output or whether that's what we do through our sort of social media partnership. So that's, I guess, what we would have traditionally talked about, the core offering. You partner with Sky Sports, your sports is going to appear on one of our channels. We're going to promote, we're going to market, we're going to talk about you in all these other places. That has been traditionally, so for Sky, it's a DTH subscription. That's the satellite, as people would kind of historically remember it. Tended to be that people took monthly subscriptions, and whether that would be from an annual contract that would have existed in the early days or when people would have first joined as Sky customers. through Now TV, what we've developed is this opportunity to engage with the Sky Sports channels for a more contained period, whether that be a day, a week, or a month. And you buy a subscription, and the subscription is just for Sky Sports channels. And really, a broadband connection is all you need. You could watch it on a mobile device, or whether you could connect it up through many other devices, and more availability for Now TV and being able to use it in more places. But that kind of lower bar means at any one point this afternoon you could be watching what Sky Sports are showing without a long contractual commitment to Sky. So when you have a spiky event or a particular moment, it's actually a lot easier, or the bar is lower for people to enter into the sort of the Sky Sports world and get access to that great sport. So I think people, certainly sports over the years that had kind of moved, or were thinking about making a move from free to air to say to Sky, I think the addition of Now TV as part of our story and our offering has been a kind of really important part of helping them convince that they were moving to a very strong and very good home.
So back to the sports-specific channels for a second. I'm just interested. I'm guessing you played a pretty key role in that decision-making process to make that happen.
Depends. Are you going to say it was a good decision or not?
No, I definitely am. I think it's actually, my personal opinion is that it was. You alluded to it before about the need for clarity in the eyes of the consumer.
Yeah.
And that's clearly what it did very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what went into that decision? How long was that in the works? What did you have to look at and consider? What were some of the, you were sitting in the strategy side, so you've been looking at a lot of different things, I imagine. Yeah. But how did you get to that point where you went, okay, it's time to make the move?
Look, I think it is something that we look back as being quite a pivotal moment. It was something that we were, I would say, nervous about, but there was going to be a reaction. Were lots of people going to be giving up channels? Was it going to leave us exposed on the right side? So there were lots of things for us to think about. And actually, almost immediately after we made the change, it felt like I don't recall one person saying, not sure we got that one right. So very quickly we were quite comfortable. But yes, a lot did go into it. It was at a time where the business was I would say was more challenged than it might be now. There were lots of conversations about audiences declining, the challenges of reaching younger audiences in particular. Lots of talk about piracy, which there still is something that we need to be sort of very tight on. Questions around the channels and what do they stand for? What impact did that have on the brand? Competition was, intense, and also the prospect of what was coming down the line from all sorts of different people that could be coming into the space was also something that was being talked about a lot. So it felt like it was, although the business, outwardly facing to customers was still delivering, that offering was strong. It felt like, that there was a need to sort of think about how we best move forward. And it was this idea that we were seeing increasingly. You kind of had this twin track of customers where, yes, you want to be accessible. Yes, you want to open yourselves up to broad audiences. But within that, there are very sort of dedicated fans that want to get that kind of deeper commitment from a sport. Know that, on a Thursday night, even though I know there's not a Formula One race, there may be some content that I'm really interested in engaging. So creating those destinations, replicating those destinations across our digital suite, giving the sports an identity. One of the other things that was really important to us was this concept of the main event channel, and I think that was probably the thing I felt strongest about, was still giving an opportunity. Well, there was two things there really. There was one, there was giving an opportunity to showcase sports that didn't necessarily have a dedicated channel, and I think that was really important because we didn't want sports to think that because perhaps at that time we didn't have the volume of the content or the hours or the audience, that actually there wasn't a home for them on Sky Sports. And also it was a way for us to navigate between sports quicker. So traditionally, if you take an example, and the one I often gave was sort of in the winter, Premier League and NFL. So the Premier League games actually move from 4 to 4:30. You then have a degree of analysis that comes off the back of that. NFL games in America, one of the slots in the US starts at 6 p.m. We weren't going to be able to influence that start time. We know better to even pick up the phone for that. So there was always going to be a challenge about that audience. But what we were able to do with main event was create an ability to come off Premier League on one channel, whilst knowing those that really want the analysis can stay on the dedicated Premier League channel, and then move and carry an audience inheritance to the NFL, which may not have existed, an hour later when, perhaps naturally the audiences sort of start to decline post the end of the live action. So we felt that was quite neat, and that has been a really sort of important thing for us to sort of keep shining lights on lots of sports, help us to grow a number of sports. And our audiences certainly in the last couple of years has been as strong as they've ever been, which maybe sort of flies in the face of some things that we're seeing in other places.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious then, so this shift to specific channels, I guess, would provide more clarity in strategy for you, for consumers, particularly on the media rights and programming side. I'm just curious, how much of the media rights acquisition piece and the programming of the content is art versus science? We have obviously a lot of data at our fingertips these days, but I'm curious, sometimes you have to just look at opportunities as they come, and if the model looks good, we go for it, or is it really, really scientific in how you guys are making decisions?
Oh, I've got to say, there's buildings of people down here at Sky Campus that no one has ever met or will ever meet that have really got the answer to all the secret sauce. So, that's our answer, and we'll stick to it. No, look, I think that there is certainly there's a benefit from an insight from the incumbents of our business, from the fact that we've been around for 30 years, that we understand audiences, that we have different parts of the business that sort of help us understand the value, whether that's our media business or whether that's our wholesale business. So there is a benefit that comes from our experience and from the tools that we have. But again, I think the important thing is you're only as good as really what's the other side of you. And I don't necessarily mean the partners. Clearly, they have their ambitions and they look what they're trying to do. But also, how do the other people in the market view opportunities? And if they see something very differently to you, then ultimately there's going to be probably some movement, and it may not be something that goes in your favour. So I think the important thing for us is to sort of understand what we're trying to do, understand the value of audiences, understand thinking about, when we want to go deep in a place, or whether actually what we want to do is actually offer more breadth, try something, think about what is this right doing? Is it bringing us volume? Is it bringing us audience? Is it complementing something else that we've got? Is it going to be very good for the brand? Is it something that we see that, in a couple of years, actually, it could be much, much bigger if we really sort of put our arms around it like we like to do. So there's kind of lots of things that are going into it, but it's sort of important to be sort of agile. It's important to be sort of flexible and to be sort of open to opportunities. I think what's tended to happen is we have stayed with a number of partners all through the period. That's because it's been a good two-way relationship. They've liked what they've had from Sky, and we've liked the benefit of being those partners. So, yeah, as much as I'd love to say it's definitely not an exact science. There is some science, but it's it's often it'll be circumstance, it'll be timing, it'll be what's the business looking for? How's the business feeling more broadly about its investments in sport versus other decisions that it could make across the board?
And obviously the price tag sometimes that's on offer, because if people are being unrealistic, then you guys are out. You can prioritize other areas.
And I think that's definitely the sort of, when you boil it down, the really difficult thing when it comes to rights is, we're trying to acquire as much as possible for as little as possible, and someone is trying to sell us as little as possible for as much as possible. So the tension is kind of there from the starting point. And, even when you've been with someone for 25 years or 30 years, next time around, they've got their stakeholders, they've got their interested parties, and they're always being told there's more money, there's more opportunity, there's more people. So I was going to say I have some sympathy for the rights holders, but I don't think I go too far with that one. But but again, our business is in a different place. There's a maturity that really, above all, it has to make sense for us. Otherwise, we just wish everyone well, and maybe we'll see them another time. Yeah.
And I'm sure, I think when people look at media rights, generally, they typically generalize how media rights deals are done, right? But the top tier sports sit in their own space and place on how those negotiations and conversations happen, because there's a whole business that's built around those, obviously, with businesses like the Premier League being the obvious example, which we can chat about in a second. But I'm curious, when you're talking to sort of those, let's say, tier 2, tier 3 sports properties, where getting the chance to be broadcast on a major broadcaster gives them so much commercial opportunity to grow their sport and awareness as well, obviously a big part of that. Does the conversation change quite dramatically if you're talking to, say, those tier 2, tier 3 sports properties, or is it all done in the same vein? I'm just imagining it's quite a different conversation.
Sort of yes and no. I think from a Sky perspective, more broadly, there'd be a lot more focus at the top end, as you're right, a lot more analysis, lot sort of longer lead into a conversation. I think where we are and what we respect is, whilst some people may characterise them as tier 2 and tier 3, they're very important in and of themselves, and we respect that, and we know, to partner with them, to offer them the Sky platform, really. We need to be all in, otherwise we're kind of wasting each other's time. So I think we're still looking to make sure that relationship is as strong as possible. And I think, yes, the economics may be different, but I think, what we're looking to do is make sure that we're giving them the same experience from a production quality, from a promotional perspective, how Sky Sports News is. So I totally get the question, but I think, again, there is, if we're going to commit to a sport, we're going to get behind it. Otherwise, there's not a lot of point. And one of the challenges, I guess, that we have had internally, and I guess that we kind of have now across the table with our partners, is talk about partners, but actually historically it's quite transactional. We do a deal, we put it to air, we see them in 3 or 4 years' time, and then they probably ask for more money if we've done a good job driving interest. So, but actually, we try and change that dynamic a little bit, try and make it fundamentally more partners really understand what they're trying to do. Is there an angle for our loyalty business? Is there an angle, around ticketing or media data or anything like that, where actually is there an angle for their partners where we can help them through Sky Media to give them opportunities, so actually they have more of an opportunity when they go to market saying we bring Sky with us. It's not just, you're not just partnering with X Sport. So we do try and sort of give everyone the full treatment. Of course, there's a bit of a reality to that when you're going to the rest of the business and you're talking to the marketing team and they're thinking about program, should we be committing money behind Sky Cinema, the next Sky original, or Premier League, or something else down the list on Sky Sports? There's always going to be a tension at the top of the Premier League and above the line. But really, for Sky Sports, we've got to find ways to make these deals work all the way for our partners, and it's something that we've sort of taken pride of over the years.
I mean, I think you guys have done a really good job with all of that. I'm just curious that you look to your counterparts, part of the Comcast family in the US and so forth, that have these incredible long rights cycles where they can build an entire business around them. You've got to be a little bit jealous of that model over there. I mean, for those that don't know from outside of maybe Europe, that there's certain sets of rights that are obviously quite limited. You can't secure them for any longer than the 3-year cycle. So that obviously really limits what you can do to build a business around those, because there's obviously that risk factor that can exist on what's going to happen in a few years' time. Whereas in the US, the media rights cycles, we've seen the NFL deal, I think it's north of 10 years, 11 years being locked into place, gives everyone security, and there's plenty of money on the table to justify it for the rights holder, as well as security for the broadcaster to evolve as consumer trends and consumption evolves. I mean, obviously that would be probably a preferable model for you guys as well. Or is it not the case? Are you quite okay with those short cycles because you get to test those relationships out and then move on? Obviously, the exception being, relationships like the Premier League, where you kind of know it works.
Yeah, look, I think you're sort of right where you sort of wrap the question up. There is definitely a level of envy. It sounds great, feels like comfortable, means that you can spend other. When we finish the Premier League process, I always used to remember the chief exec. Maybe on the night or the next morning would say, "Good news is there's only 1,000 days until the next one," and it always suddenly you feel like there's a clock ticking. But that's, I don't know whether it was meant to give any comfort or to say, well, you can have a good night's sleep tonight, but you're up in the morning early. So there is a level of that. But I also think that, as we talked a little bit earlier, we understand our business, we understand what works, what doesn't work, probably better, and maybe actually, for other people coming into the market, it may be more of a challenge the short term. Maybe it's more of a risk for the rights holder. Maybe it's more, So I think there's kind of swings and roundabouts with it. I think In the right circumstances with the right partners, I think absolutely we would love to have longer term deals, but we accept that that's not going to be the case, and that optionality as well is not necessarily lost on us.
And obviously, with those cycles, you've had a load of competitors come in and out of the market in the UK over the years. Obviously, more recently, BT Sport's been the main competitor, which became a bit more of a friend over the years as you guys generated a change in those relationships. But now, obviously, they've recently been a joint venture. I think it's what they've termed it as with Discovery. I'm just curious, though, how do you look at that competition coming into the market? I mean, you have to be paying a lot of attention, I imagine, because if you were to lose something like the Premier League rights, obviously that would be really disruptive to your business. So how do you tackle that competitive landscape? Because obviously sometimes there's people in the market that, well, I guess in BT's example, they were doing whatever they could to hide behind the scenes before they launched into the market with their first rights acquisition. So just talk us through how you see that, from your guys' lens, because obviously you guys are the market leaders. So you've got a target on your back.
Yeah, and we're told to take that as a sort of a positive and look at that in the right light. Look, again, we started talking about how long I'd been around, and my early days in the research department, we were talking about ITV Digital and people like that, and then we went through waves where we were talking about Setanta and ESPN, and then it was BT, and then it's been what's come since. I think always with my Sky Sports hat on, your instinct, because you're to be competitive, because we like to win, we want to be the best, and I think that's what's that's driven a lot of the behaviour. And actually, we've taken the challenge at various points as a means to sort of challenge ourselves to make sure we're keeping on ourselves, we're innovative, we're best in class, all that kind of stuff, and I think. If when BT came in the market again, we're probably talking about 10 years ago. I guess what probably changed then that we hadn't had before that was it was a competitor the wider business could understand, because there was broadband, and then there was going to be mobile, and there was platform. Whereas before, they almost felt like a bit sort of local derbies or whatever that is. It was sports' problem. You deal with that. We're going to concentrate on everything that else is going on here. So there was a little bit of a different dynamic in that period. But you're right to say that we've kind of moved as a business, and we don't necessarily talk about competitors. We talk about partners now as much as anything. And BT is a partner on the platform. Not virtually all the other players that you may talk about being as competitors for rights exist on the Sky platform. So it has changed. We do obviously think about it, but again, in the scheme of things, we're always thinking about what makes most sense for us. If we didn't have the Premier League, as upsetting as that would be, there's been a big push over the years to make sure the business is diversified. We hope we never really have to challenge that fundamentally, but clearly the business has diversified, become singularly less reliant on one individual process or outcome, whether that's in a sport, whether that's outside of sport. So yeah, we think about it morning, noon, and night, but we think about it in a way as how do we sort of keep plotting ourselves forward, not like let's get sort of too sort of paranoid about it. I think one of the lines that Comcast uses, sort of healthy paranoia, so to try and sort of focus it in the positive. So look, there will always be competition. There has to be competition. We'll try and use that as positively as we can. What we won't do is we won't let our business get bent out of shape by the competition.
Mm. So do you see that this Discovery joint venture with BT is a moment where you're going, well, there's a big business now backing this now, a big global media business. Do you see this as a moment that is more, I don't want to say you're more concerned about, but more aware of than, say, when BT came to the market? Or do you think that one, because of the complete picture of what you've described about the fact that it was competing with the whole business, was more of a concern for the business overall?
Look, I think, again, whilst that business has changed, our business has changed. When we go back 10 years ago, and not necessarily, I don't mean this in the context of BT, so I don't mean disrespectfully BT, but there was a lot of talk about global media streamers coming into market, whether it was going to be Facebook, whether it's going to be Apple, whether it's going to be Amazon. And actually Sky in the UK felt like a relatively small business. But what's changed over the time is the Sky Group came together in Europe, and then obviously we had the Comcast NBC takeover of the Sky business. So we're now part of an even bigger group. So when we face out to the world, we face out to the world as a much bigger organisation than we've done at any point. So I think that gives us a level of sort of calmness and confidence in how we think about things, that, we are part of something bigger. We do have a lot of assets and a lot of elements to any conversation that we can have with a sport, with an individual talent within a sport, with some, even our colleagues in the movies world, there's things that we can do that can give them a kind of a USP. So I think, we always respect what's going on out there. It is going to be, when it plays through, it's going to be interesting to see how they approach the UK, how they approach global. Discovery has clearly made some significant plays internationally already, but we sit as a very different business ourselves. So again, and what we've also learnt is, to do business in the world, to do business in the UK, it tends to be partnerships, relationships. So, we have a partnership with BT, as we have a partnership with Discovery. And as if they bring the Warner elements into it, we do things with them. So the scale of our business in the UK usually means that we're going to have a conversation. And increasingly I'm seeing, media entities looking at the Sky platform and the benefits of being a partner of Sky platform as a kind of really accelerator for their business.
When you talk about the platform, I guess that's the bit that has really changed over the last few years, is like the growth of connected devices as well, and what you guys are able to offer, those distribution partnerships you have in place with some of those competitors. Could you just talk us through what those relationships are, more nuts and bolts? So you're providing, they're aggregated in your wider offering. Is that through your main product? Is that through your connected products? Where does that sit?
Well, look, I mean, that sits a little bit outside of the remit in my remit in Sky Sports, but certainly as Sky, we can talk to the platform, whether that's Sky Q, which has been in market for sort of 5+ years, or the new integrated TV platform, or Sky Glass. What we've done is almost taken the Sky Sports model that we talked about, destinations, and sort of like supersized that. So really, it's everything is existing through that one interface, whether that's engaging with the free-to-air channels through the TV guide, or through their catch-up destinations, or doing the same things with the various entertainment channels. There's through Sky Glass and Q, there's going to be an apps marketplace where some of the biggest apps, whether those be sport ones or the other ones that we all know very well, the destination. And what Sky will do, and what Sky is looking to do is integrate that in the UI and the merchandising. So you would see a Disney Plus channel or program sitting alongside a Sky Sports program, sitting alongside a Netflix program, sitting along a Sky Showcase program. So it's really creating that destination, and I think, and that benefit of having, certainly through the Sky platform, 10 million plus. Then you've got Now TV as well, creating its own version of that destination, where really, it's such a strong and compelling customer aggregated service that really, we don't see there be a lot of reason why you'd want to be outside of that.
Well, often also, Jonathan, we often hear a lot that fragmentation is a huge problem, right? Because of the splicing and dicing of sports rights from rights holders. Now, you only get a piece of the pie. And are you guys trying to solve that fragmentation issue a little bit by being effectively an aggregator of the main platforms and channels?
But I think that's right. I think we're giving partners the opportunity. If that is a destination for them, then there is a place for them as well, and they'll probably see the benefit of being part of that, that scale, those number of living rooms. There's definitely a benefit of that. I think, some sports you can see are going. We talked a lot about D2C over the years. One of our old partners, WWE, has done a very interesting thing in the US, and what they did with Peacock, where effectively they just put their D2C product within the old Peacock ecosystem, and that's an interesting evolution of the model, and it'll be interesting to see whether that's something that catches on. But I think what they're seeing there is a kind of a sort of wider benefit of being in something bigger, because it means people can consume different content, different advertising, different abilities. So I think yes, I think it's a smart strategy from Sky to create that opportunity. I think what it's doing is it's giving sports a chance. If they still feel like there's a real world for them in D2C, they want the data, they want the relationship, they've got the volume of content, they've got the archive, that they can have that, but also they can have that alongside a more traditional rights relationship.
Yeah, I think the WWE one's a great example, and one that really took the industry by surprise, because they were largely lauded for what they've built in terms of the platform, in terms of the audience, and to then make that deal really took people by surprise. But the latest numbers I think they've shared show that audiences are higher, they're generating more revenue, it's ticking all the boxes. The only thing that they don't have is obviously that direct owned relationship with the consumer, but hey, it's got
trading it off for good value. Yeah,
traded it off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Do you? I mean, you probably. I think you're alluding to it, I suppose, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But effectively, you would, I guess, off the success of that, you'd be surprised, I suppose, to not see more of those relationships develop over the coming years.
Look, I think it's. I could see how it makes a lot of sense for WWE. I believe it's been a big part of the growth story for Peacock. I think what you've got to have is you're going to have sports and partners that can deliver that scale to make it worthwhile. I think that may be more of the challenge is, and what we've seen over the last couple of years, we've almost had a few sort of real life experiments where we had COVID and we had everything that was associated with that, and we had no crowds in grounds, and sports were given an opportunity to go D2C in a way that would not necessarily been contemplated normally through the kind of contractual situations, but it was almost a needs must. So I think sports learned a little bit through those processes about levels of demand and their ability to serve that. So look, I think there's always lots going on in that space. I think, we absolutely see the benefit of the aggregation. We see the benefit of the promotion. We see the benefit of being in kind of one ecosystem. I think, but each sport will have to make its own decision on how it sees itself and where it wants to play.
On the direct-to-consumer side, do you see that then as a long-term competitor in terms of, losing out rights from your premium partners who want to go to the direct-to-consumer angle being a legitimate concern? Or do you think realistically it'd be very hard for them to turn away from the partnerships they have with someone like yourselves who've a premium partner and supporting them financially, as well as giving them an audience, as well as the promotion, etc. How concerned are you with just that long-term viability for sports to go D2C?
From our perspective, look, I mean, you won't surprise yourself. I'm a big believer in our model. I think, if we can continue, I know that the sports will continue to want to look for very strong financial commitments from their partners. I still think that the Sky model gives us good a chance to do that because of where we operate and how we operate, and because of the scale that we do it. And there was always this talk over the years about reach and revenue, and if you went with the free to airs, you were getting the reach, and if you went with pay TV, you were getting the revenues. I think we actually think that some of the models and some of the more mixed models that we've seen, whether that's Formula One and the highlights deal that we've done with Channel 4, or whether there's some of the other deals where you've just like the 100, where you've seen again a lot of content on free to air and perhaps more, that actually we're sort of really hitting a good sweet spot for partners in that reach and revenue piece, and I think that's going to be very compelling. And the certainty of that, and the certainty of when you're direct to consumer, you've got to go and find those audiences, you've got to find those customers, you've got to keep them. And you've got to keep.
Your whole business goes from being a B2B sales process to selling it yourself, which is just, I think, underestimated the scale of that proposition, right?
I think so. And on, we tend to do deals 18 months out from when they start, which gives you a certain level of financial security, and there's got a line of sight. But then, you come, let's say, middle of August, day one, you've got to go and get to that level, and every day you're not at that level with your product is you're a little bit behind what you may have walked away from historically.
One of the other, we've obviously talked a little bit about the Premier League, touched upon it, but also Formula One is probably another one of those key sports for you, and you have a dedicated channel to it. A lot of coverage, particularly on media and social media, with regards to the impact of the Netflix series Drive to Survive had on popularity, particularly in the US, but I think globally as well, there's recognition that that's been a great avenue and outlet for them. I'm curious, as someone who's owns basically the exclusive rights to F1 in the UK, you are the home and the destination for the sport. Are you seeing that appetite rise as dramatically as the noise and interest that is being created through media about its popularity?
Yeah, look, we are very proud, again, I use the word a lot, of our partnership with Formula One. It's sort of 10 plus years. The opening race last weekend was our 200th race since we did the deal. So we're very pleased with that. And audiences are stronger than they've ever been. Again, when we had the first had the conversations with F1 about Drive to Survive and Netflix and the fact it was coming, we would be liars if we said, look, it's fantastic, thank goodness, we've been waiting for you to tell us that this was going to happen. But we also understood that what the opportunity would be there, and we have seen that. I think there are important things for us, though. With the amount of money that we commit to the sport, we expect still to have the access that we would want and have that protected. I think we need to make sure that everything that we're doing is being done in a way that's making the sport accessible as well. And Netflix could have had Drive to Survive, but if we'd had the races and some of the seasons that we may have seen when we were a bit younger, where if you made it to the first corner, that was going to be it for 65 laps. The racing, the events have been fantastic. The drama on track has been unbelievable, and we've been beneficiaries of that. Now, if Drive to Survive has helped that, thank you very much. We welcome it. But I think, the commitment and everything that we're doing, everything the sport of F1 has done to modernise, to open itself up, I think deserves a huge amount of credit as well. So look, F1, last season we had more people watching. I think more people watched F1 in the UK last year than at any point in the previous 10 years. We saw more younger audiences come in. We saw more female sports fans. Those are two very important, broader groups for us to be trying to bring into Sky Sports. So we, I guess the long story short is, if there has been a Netflix effect, we're happy. We also know that we've got to play our own role in making sure that we're being as accessible as possible, and that we are, that our investment in the sport is being protected as well. And at the moment, we feel that we are the right side of that. As a business, we have Sky Studios, we have our own ambitions in originals, we have our own ambitions in the documentary space. Maybe that's something we'll think about more and more ourselves, whether, do we have the ability to be doing programs at that scale and having that kind of popularity? And I absolutely think we will have.
Absolutely. And my personal take on the whole Drive to Survive thing is I think you're right. It's one piece of the pie. There's been a lot of great moves by F1 to improve the relationship with fans, be more digital first, helping accessibility. And obviously you guys invest a lot of resource into the promotion of the sport in between races. It's not just the live race itself, which sometimes people in the media might take a little bit for granted. One idea I think that needs to happen, though, if this sort of Drive to Survive style documentary or just original programming like this is so valuable, we need it more real time. Needs to be a couple of days later. So I want to see Sky producing after the race a couple of days later the sort of the behind the scenes style insight into the race. And I think if you do that, then you'll have more of my money. That's for sure. One other area that you guys have. One of the areas you have really doubled down on, obviously, is your investment into women's sports, and in football, obviously, is being at the heart of that again. Just talk us through why you've decided to really ramp up the coverage of it on your channels.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's long-standing, our commitment for women's sport. We celebrated 25 years with ECB last year on women's sport. Netball relationship is 16 years old now. WSL we were very proud when that relationship was announced, and it started last September. We talked about the verticals, and actually one of the big challenges for us is we didn't have that representation of women's sport in football. Football is clearly a sport we're very synonymous with. So it's been something that we've been targeting and hoping to change for a period. And it was quite a long conversation with the WSL. They clearly had an incumbents, and we respect that. But what we wanted to do was be able to demonstrate to them that we would make that commitment to the sport. We would produce it at the high standards. We would promote it. We would put it absolutely on the top pedestal that it's real. And we do continue to see a real opportunity for the WSL to grow significantly. We don't, we know it's not there, but we'd like to go on that journey with the WSL and with the FA and all the clubs. So look, it's really important to us. It's important to us to do that in a way that's opening ourselves up to new audiences, to make sure that the sport that we're covering better represents the people that are watching our coverage as well. So, it's all part of the mix. It's a very significant part of how we're trying to face out to customers and viewers. And look, we've seen the success there early on. We've seen some of the highest audiences ever for the WSL. Likewise, in the 100, I think with the first game of the 100, the Oval Invincibles of the Manchester Originals is the highest rated female cricket match of all time, and that was a partnership between us and the BBC. So, we see an opportunity for growth. We see that through a sort of hard business lens, but we also see it as an opportunity to sort of give people a kind of a reason to sort of re-engage with our brand and perhaps think a little bit differently about Sky and Sky Sports.
Interesting. And Jonathan, we're sort of running out of time now, so I just wanted to sort of get a sense of, you've had some big change over the years. Consumers are changing the way they consume sports dramatically. Is there anything you have in the works in terms of how you're looking to evolve with these changes and transformation? That I know obviously you have had some soft moves that you've made to combat this, but is there anything dramatic you guys are looking at, or anything we should keep an eye out for, I suppose?
Yeah, look, it's very much a focus for us. We've had the last couple of years where we've been in a very different world where it's just all about sort of getting sport on, making sure the environments are safe. There's been a volume of sport that really has meant that the teams have probably worked harder than ever. We kind of we're very grateful for everything that's happened there, and clearly lots of people have been viewing it and watching it, engaging it. I think now the challenge is as we kind of look forward, almost to what you're saying, what's next? How do we appeal to more fans? I touched on that a little bit. Are there different ways that we need to do that? What are some of the adjacencies that are existing around sport that could be opportunities for us to give viewers more value, or to think about how we can help some of our partners monetize better in spaces? I think there's a lot out there for us to go after. We're certainly thinking about it. We certainly have that challenge from our business about being sort of restless and relentless in how we move forward. So we feel excited about the opportunity. Some of the stuff we touched on earlier about where sport has been in this business, in our business, some of the challenges that we face. I think as we sort of sit here today, sport is in a very good place. We've seen it remains very important in people's lives. The genre is in a good place. It's shown how it can broaden its appeal by different forms of programming. And now really the opportunity is for us, with the investments that we make, with the platform that we have, to think about how we can sort of continue to lead, and how we can absolutely push forward. So I clearly wasn't going to give too many specific examples, but absolutely, it's the focus, and it's the challenge that we have. What are the expansive stories for Sky Sports, and how can we be more things to more people, and do that in a kind of good and sustainable way with our partners?
Well, something I have picked up from a few of the bigger media businesses that I've talked to from in the US in particular is they've shifted their focus a little bit, where sports used to be very much, it is still heart and center of their offering, but Fubo TV CEO David Gandler uses the line, "Come for the sports, stay for the entertainment," is sort of his line that he likes to use for his strategy. When I talk to the guys at Discovery, they've talked about, Andrew Georgiou, who's president over there at the sports division. They've talked about that they've seen that those who consume sports are way more likely to stay and consume other entertainment, and therefore be more engaged as a consumer than those that only just come for entertainment. Or, there's basically some trends you can really pull. Sports role is evolving, I suppose, in a media business itself, where it's one piece of a much bigger jigsaw puzzle than before. Perhaps a lot of the industry might have said it's all about sports. Sports will win audiences and will keep them. Do you have a similar sort of look in terms of within Sky itself? Is that role of sports evolved as such, where it is still the hook, it's the primary way of attracting subscribers, but that is just one key channel out of everything Sky offers to make sure you keep a consumer happy?
Yeah, look, I totally get the question and observe the kind of trend that you talked to. I think from our perspective at Sky, so we maybe a bit further along. I don't mean further as in people are behind, but just how we're thinking about things. Clearly sport was central to to the Sky business for a very long time. You know, the heart of everything we did, and you know, over the years, you early days, you may have narrowed that even more to sort of Premier League. I think, you know, clearly we made a very conscious effort through the period to sort of put more focus into our entertainment output, our diversification of the business, investment in original content, because there was this sense that in sport you were renting the content where you could own the content in a different space. But again, I think what we've seen in the last few years is this sort of, not say recovery, but sort of reminder of sport that it still is, you know, the best form of entertainment. We would say that, we're biased. It's still a real differentiator. It's still a kind of banker. You know, the Masters is going to happen in 2 weeks' time. It's going to happen in the middle of April next year. It's going to happen the year after, let's hope. And, you know, and that, you know, that for sports fans, that's a guarantee of a positive experience. So I think there's kind of that acknowledgement about sport in a sort of real sort of positive light. Clearly, we have the influence of our US ownership and sport being so central. You know, when you look at what's going on there with linear TV and how sport is the kind of, how that's standing so resolute, or certain sports are standing so resolute. So there's a kind of a leaning and a recognition of that. So yes, we're totally happy to be part of a bigger story. We want to be responsible. We want to work very closely and be part of a, you know, an even stronger story that Sky can face out. But sort of quietly, we're kind of saying, you know, sport is good and it's big, and you know, please kind of respect that and recognise that. So that hasn't been a constant, I would say, over the last 5-10 years. But because of what we've done with our business, because of where we're in, I think more than ever, there's a kind of the recognition that sport is really very central. Now it's central when it's part of a bigger story, but you know, it's in a good place at Sky, and kind of our responsibility is to make sure that it stays there.
It certainly is in a good place, and I think the success you've had at Sky with using sports to build a business is really a first in class for the entire industry to see and to follow. So congratulations to you, Jonathan, and your team for what you've built over there. I really appreciate you finding some time to join us and give us a little bit of insight into the business at Sky Sports, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Nick. Cheers.